In the headlines this evening, South Korea's defense ministry says military officials from the two Koreas met today for about 6 hours at the truce village of Panmunjom. The Bank of Korea cuts the nation's key interest rate by 25 basis points to 2%. It also revises down this year's growth forecast to 3.5%. And the Ebola epidemic shows no signs of diminishing. The WHO says by December, there could be up to 10,000 new Ebola cases per week. These stories and more coming right up. Hello and welcome to Early Edition at 6. It's Wednesday, October 15th here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I'm Laah Hyun-kyung.
And I'm Daniel Choy. Thank you for joining us. Reports had been coming out since this morning that the two Koreas were holding high-level military talks on this Wednesday.
But it wasn't until around 4 p.m. Korean time that Seoul's defense ministry finally confirmed that the meeting did, in fact, take place. Our Hwang Sung-hee starts us off.
The two Koreas held a secretive round of military talks on Wednesday in attempts to ease tensions in their border regions. Seoul's defense ministry said general-level officers met at the truce village of Panmunjom after Pyongyang proposed the meeting last week. North Korea demanded three things: that South Korean vessels steer clear of the maritime border, that the South Korean government keep activists from flying anti-Pyongyang leaflets across the border, and that the media stop slandering the North Korean leadership. In response, South Korea said Pyongyang must respect their de facto maritime border in the West Sea, and that the government cannot stop the spread of the leaflets and restrict the media since South Korea is a liberal democratic society. Last week, South and North Korean patrol boats exchanged fire after a North Korean vessel crossed the de facto maritime border in the West Sea. 3 days later, the two Koreas exchanged gunfire across their shared border after the North fired at South Korean balloons carrying anti-Pyongyang leaflets. The defense ministry said Wednesday's meeting was kept secret due to escalating military tensions following the recent clashes. But no concrete agreement was reached, with no date set for their next meeting. Meanwhile, the Unification Ministry confirmed that it proposed to the North on Monday the date for their planned second round of high-level talks. The ministry said South Korea offered to meet on October 30th at Panmunjom, but is still waiting for a response from the North. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
President Park Geunhye has arrived in Italy to attend a biennial meeting between Asian and European leaders. During her 5-day trip, she will also have a chance to promote her diplomatic policies, including how to deal with North Korea. Arirang's Choi Yoo-sun sends this report from Milan.
President Park Geunhye will attend this year's summit of the Asia-Europe meeting, better known as ASEM, starting Thursday. Here, the South Korean president plans to garner support from some 50 world leaders for her so-called Eurasia Initiative, which aims to link energy and logistics infrastructure across the continent to lay the foundation for new growth opportunities in both Asia and Europe. And by having North Korea participate in the initiative, President Park anticipates the reclusive regime will eventually open up to the world, end nuclear development, and thereby set the stage for a peaceful unification of the peninsula. Also at the 2-day summit, the Korean leader will talk about her country's future contributions as a key middle power in politics, the economy, society, and culture. Ahead of the global gathering, President Park will meet with Korean and Italian business leaders to pledge support for stronger economic cooperation between the two sides. She will hold a luncheon with Korean residents in Italy to emphasize how they can better bridge the two sides, reflecting on Seoul and Rome's 130 years of diplomatic relations this year.
On the sidelines of the ASEM summit, President Park is scheduled to meet several world leaders, including Chinese Premier Li Keqiang. During that meeting, the South Korean president will likely highlight China's role in persuading North Korea to lay down its nuclear arms and to revive dialogue with the international community. Choi Yoo-sun, Arirang News, Milan.
Starting today, it's now easier for foreign entities to receive benefits from the Korean government when bringing their businesses into Korea. Our Song Ji-sun takes a look at some of these legal revisions aimed at elevating the nation's reputation as a global hub that's worth investing in.
Challenging Singapore, Shanghai, and other major cities in Asia for the regional headquarters of multinational companies. That's Seoul's aim and the sole purpose of a revision to Korea's Foreign Investment Promotion Act, which goes into effect on Wednesday. Seoul will now acknowledge the branch of a global mother company as a regional headquarters if it has an average revenue of $3 billion over the past 5 years, if they employ more than 10 people here, and if more than half of their investment shares come from overseas. To be recognized as a research and development center, they'll need 5 permanent researchers with $100,000 in investments to receive incentives. Creating new jobs is also an important criteria in receiving government benefits. Those that hire 200 or more employees, with total investments exceeding $2.5 million, will get a 100% reduction in rent at government-run foreign investment complexes. Before this revision, foreign manufacturers needed to invest $5 million to receive a 75% reduction. Foreign direct investment has hit a record high this year, logging $15 billion in the third quarter, up about 40% from the same period last year. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy says attracting high value-added foreign investment is crucial to realizing the nation's potential economic growth. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
The Bank of Korea has cut its key rate to a record low of 2% to give a much-needed boost to the slumping economy. The central bank's concerns over the economy was reflected in its new growth forecast for this year, which was cut to mid-3% level. Our Hwang Ji-hye has more.
Lowering growth forecast for the economy, the Bank of Korea on Wednesday cut its key interest rate by 1/4 percentage point to 2%. It's the second rate cut in just 3 months and marks a drop to the record low only matched at the height of the global financial crisis in 2009. BOK Governor Lee Ju-yeol said the rate cut was necessary as economic sentiment remains sluggish at home, while inflation stays lower than expected.
The Monetary Policy Committee believes the 2 rate cuts, including the one in August, should help the domestic economy recover its growth momentum.
In the face of the feeble pace of recovery, the central bank cut its new growth forecast for this year to 3.5% from an earlier projection of 3.8%. Although the new growth outlook for next year was trimmed by a mere 0.1 percentage point, the central bank said that does not mean the economy is stably back on a normal track.
We expect the Korean economy to grow nearly 4% in 2015, but the growth will mainly come from the government's expansionary policy.
The rate cut this month, however, stokes concerns. The country's household debt that already stands at around $950 billion could spiral out of control. Experts add that the domestic economy could face massive capital outflows with the historically low key rate in place while the U.S. Federal Reserve is tightening its monetary policy. Acknowledging such concerns, the governor said the central bank will closely monitor the risks stemming from the rate cut. He said although the recent rate cuts will help prop up growth, structural changes are critical for the longer-term health of the economy. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Korea's import prices fell for the 7th consecutive month last month on weakening oil prices. The Bank of Korea says the import price index stood at 93 in September, the lowest level in 5.5 years. The central bank explained the local currency weakened against the greenback by 0.8% in September from a month earlier. But the price of Dubai crude shed more than 5%, dragging overall import prices down. Korea's unemployment rate inched down in September from August, but the pace of job creation slowed to a 3-month low. Statistics Korea says the jobless rate stood at 3.2% last month, edging down 0.1 percentage point from the previous month. Some 450,000 new jobs were created in September, up around 2% on year, bringing Korea's employment rate to 61%, up 0.4 percentage points from August. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg and his 40-member delegation spent the second day of their trip to Korea in Suwon, south of Seoul. Samsung Electronics says Facebook board members, including Chief Operating Officer Sheryl Sandberg, stopped by at Samsung's key complex called Samsung Digital City in Suwon. Prior to that, on Tuesday, Zuckerberg met with Samsung Electronics Vice Chairman Lee Jae-yong for 2 hours over dinner. There are no official details on yesterday's meeting, but industry watchers say they may have exchanged ideas on a smartphone collaboration. But just as important as coming up with ingenious and innovative gadgets is developing revolutionary power cells to keep it going. That's why Korean manufacturers are already working on new types of batteries. And according to our Kim Young-gil, they bend, flex, and even roll.
Samsung SDI has developed the world's first bendable and rollable batteries that can be integrated into smart wristband watches.
We conducted thousands of bending tests, and there was no performance degradation in the charging capacity of the batteries.
Samsung SDI also unveiled PIN batteries that are identical in size to a drug capsule at just 3.6 millimeters in diameter. They can be used in a variety of wearable devices that require ultra-small batteries. Not to be outdone, LG Chem introduced cable batteries, which can be used to light up OLED monitors and small display panels. They can be bent and twisted and are also waterproof.
Cable batteries are suitable for powering wearable devices such as Bluetooth earphones, headphones, and can even be applied to various clothing materials.
Both companies are also focusing on large-sized batteries which can be used in electric vehicles. They say mass production on those will begin in the next few years. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
A one-day entry ban. 77.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with experts on the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best. With Laah Hyun-kyung and Daniel Choy.
Arirang News. Arirang News.
On Early Edition at 6.
The death toll in West Africa's Ebola outbreak continues to mount at a worrying pace. The World Health Organization says more than 4,400 people have now been killed by the virus and warns that there could be up to 10,000 new cases per week by the end of the year if proper measures are not taken to contain the spread. Compounding fears is the rising fatality rate of this particular Ebola strain, which is now at about 70%. The epidemic is said to be expanding geographically in Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. To keep it out of its borders, the United Kingdom began screening for Ebola at London's Heathrow Airport on Tuesday. This as around 1,000 people from Ebola-affected nations flew into the country over the last month. And moving on to the latest from the so-called umbrella movement in Hong Kong, police have cleared out a tunnel outside the city government headquarters that had been barricaded by pro-democracy protesters the night before. The violent confrontations reignited early this morning as the police step up their offensive to clear the city's roads that have been blocked by activists for more than 2 weeks now. Officials used pepper spray and batons to disperse the protesters and arrested 45 people overnight. Demonstrators continued to demand that the residents of Hong Kong pick their own chief executive in 2017, a move the incumbent chief says has almost zero chance of happening. The not-so-warm bilateral relations between Korea and Japan may be heading into an even frostier zone. Despite Korea's demand that Japan acknowledge its past wrongdoings, Tokyo keeps on saying it had done nothing wrong. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
The frosty ties between Korea and Japan are far from thawing. The Japanese government says it will actively promote that Japan has committed no sins when it comes to forcing women to serve as sex slaves during World War II. The statement made at a cabinet meeting on Tuesday is in response to a lawmaker's question about the Asahi Shimbun newspaper's decision in early August to retract what it called erroneous articles published in the 80s and 90s about the sexual slavery issue. According to the statement, Japan will strengthen foreign communications so that its stance and handling of affairs receives a fair assessment by the international community. The move goes against Korea's demand that Japan acknowledge and show sincerity about its historical wrongdoings, particularly the sexual enslavement of women. The Seoul government also deplored on Wednesday the Japanese Foreign Minister Kishida Fumio a day earlier repeated Tokyo's claim to Korea's easternmost Dokdo Island, despite Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's administration's pledge to take steps to improve bilateral ties. Adding fuel to the fire, a top cabinet official who has spearheaded efforts to deny Japan's wartime sexual enslavement says she will visit a controversial war shrine that honors A-class war criminals.
When time allows, I'll visit the Yasukuni Shrine.
Japan's chief cabinet secretary Yoshida Suga said there's nothing wrong with paying respect to those who lost their lives while fighting for the country. With Korea and Japan on diverging paths, it seems highly unlikely that long-delayed bilateral summit talks will be arranged anytime soon. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Korea has enjoyed a rapid spike in the number of Chinese tourists in recent years and want to make sure the good times continue. The Tourism Ministry on Wednesday announced a series of new measures and regulations to enhance the quality of services offered to visitors from China. They include investing in the development of new tour programs, systemizing smart tourism initiatives, and making sure there are a suitable number of hotel rooms available at reasonable prices. The government has put particular emphasis on improving the quality of Chinese-speaking tour guides by strengthening education programs and raising qualification standards. The total of Chinese tourists to Korea has grown at an average rate of 35% over the last 5 years. A one-of-a-kind gilt bronze statue of Buddha was recently returned to Korea. It is now on display for the first time, and for a closer look, our Im Yoon-hee takes us to the exhibition venue.
Just this week, the National Museum of Korea unveiled a gilt bronze statue of Buddha that dates back to the late 8th or early 9th century, under the unified Silla era. And for the first time ever, this rare treasure is being put on public display. At 30 centimeters tall, the statue of Buddha resonates stylistic traits of that period, such as flat features and a big face, as well as a unique design, making this work truly one of a kind.
There are jewels embedded within the halo of the figure, making this one of only 2 in the world and possibly the only one with jewels embedded in the base as well.
Another treasure recently returned to the nation is now making its first public debut as well. The rare Goryeo Dynasty lacquered suture box is thought to be one of only 9 authentic specimens left in the world. With over 450 patterns of peonies, turtles, and other shapes, the delicate wooden box is now part of the new exhibition, showcasing a compilation of prized treasures recently returned to Korea, including an illustration of the historical Battle of Noryang, the final battle site of Korea's legendary Admiral Lee Sun-shin. Many of the items now on display were purchased by the museum or donated. But in the end, no price tag can match the historical value each one of these relics contains when it comes to Korea's history. Im Yoon-hee, Arirang News.
And now on to a story that has some parents here in Korea worried. Obesity is a serious problem throughout much of the world.
Also equally dangerous is dangerous optimisms of parents who believe that it'll all add up once they outgrow their current shell. Unfortunately, that's not the case. We have the overall obesity rate here in Korea, among young boys in particular, is at a very dangerous rate.
Right. It now surpasses the OECD average. Apparently, our Son Jung-in has this next report.
8-year-old Son Su-min is heavier than most of his classmates. After a body checkup, his parents were told he has a body fat ratio twice the average for a boy his age. Like many kids in Korea, Su-min likes to tuck into calorie and carbohydrate-rich food like white rice, red meat, and fast food, and doesn't get enough exercise.
I like snacks and drinks. I like soda like Coke.
His mother wasn't aware of the consequences and just gave him whatever he asked for.
I heard people say that fat children usually eat up being taller as adults.
The problem has worsened in recent years. In Korea, 1 in 4 boys aged 5 to 17 are obese, which is slightly higher than the OECD average. What's more concerning is that well over half of those boys remain obese into adulthood and are at higher risk of becoming morbidly obese. Obesity can lead to a host of other health issues like diabetes, high blood pressure, and it can also increase the chance of cerebrovascular disease at a young age.
Obesity is known to cause cancer, including colorectal cancer, breast cancer, as well as asthma, fatty liver, and other liver disorders.
It also incurs great social costs in terms of medical expenses and loss of production. According to recent data, the socioeconomic cost stemming from child obesity in Korea amounts to $1.3 billion each year. Child and teenage obesity not only affects the individual, but their family, school, and the community as a whole. Experts advise parents to create a friendly but firm atmosphere for their children and encourage them to exercise and eat fresh fruit and vegetables to maintain a healthier lifestyle. 손정인, 아리랑 뉴스.
Well, if you're in Korea, I'm sure you will agree with us. It feels like we are inching closer and closer to winter.
That's right. It almost feels like we are skipping fall. But let's turn to our Michelle Park at the Weather Center for the latest weather update. Michelle.
Good evening, guys. It's been a nice, cool and sunny afternoon here in Korea, but as you said, temperatures are starting to drop. Now, the weather is going to be chillier tomorrow due to the rain and strong winds. And the rain will start in the west of the central region in the early morning hours and extend towards Jeollabuk-do province and Gyeongsang-buk-do province as well throughout the morning before clearing up by noon. And strong winds are expected in the afternoon as well, so it will feel much colder. Now, looking at the rest of the week, it looks favorable with temperatures warming back up into the 20s. Enjoy this nice weather while you can because more rain is expected for next week. Now, going over to our temperature readings for tomorrow, Seoul will peak at 12 degrees before reaching up to 19 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Daegu and Busan will be warmer at 21 and 23 degrees. Now moving over to other regions, Jeju Island will see up to 21 as well, while Dokdo drops down to 18, while Mangkungang will be sunny and higher at 19. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
Well, if you do have time, do visit Seokcheon Lake if you're in Korea to check out one of Hyun-kyung's favorite
yes,
items.
the big yellow rubber
Korea.
duck.
Right. Hopefully it's back to its full body self and right now pleasing a lot of fans for some photo time. Well, thank you for staying with us. To our viewers in different time zones, do have a wonderful day. This has been Daniel Choy.
And I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. The both of us will be back tomorrow, same time. Do join us again then. Until then, bye-bye.